So, hello everybody. Hello, we are welcoming you here today in our session, and we really pleasant. It's our tremendous pleasure to have you today in our webinar, which is talking about the public speaking. Today, our session is taking for hour or more, and remember that we will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. And please, if you have any question, you just write it in the chat box or just unmute yourself and ask the presenter, our great speaker today, directly. So what about, I will give a short brief about our speaker today. Who is our speaker? Our speaker, actually, is Dr. Craig J Selby. Craig is qualitative and historic researcher. He has been involved in tertiary education and management since 1993 and has lectured and supervised research students at universities and polytechnics in several Asia-Pacific countries. He is multidisciplinary in outlook. His undergraduate degree in socio-economic geography, master's in economic development, and doctoral work in economic and globalization. He holds additional postgraduate qualifications in tertiary teaching and learning, and has a keen interest in educational management and facilitation development. He is the principal and co-founder of the Third Degree and Academic. Third Degree, it's an academic resource platform for postgraduate students and is now devoted to providing solutions to help empower research students. Dr. Craig teaches qualitative research skills as well as dissertation writing and to a global audience. He is also a professor of education for a university in India, coordinating and facilitating a postgraduate diploma in education and innovation. Additionally, he teaches postgraduate courses in research methodology and communication for a number of Malaysian universities. Craig also co-founded Orchan Consulting Asia, a branding and communicating agency headquartered in Kuala Lumpur. At Orchan, he represents local and regional clients in services, property, education, as well as conducting C-suite training in crisis communication, change management, and stakeholder outreach development. Here you are, Dr. Craig, the stage is yours. Welcome and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Rashid. First of all, thank you for inviting me back. I'm glad that last year's webinar went well and you wanted to hear from me again. And thank you for being my host this evening. It's always nice to have someone I know well as my host, so that's really cool. I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight. I usually ask to do a photo opportunity at the end, but I'm going to ask, please turn on your cameras. I'd like to do a enough to please just turn your camera on. Let us into your living room. If you're not wearing clothes, put something on your top very quickly and it will be perfectly fine. Or just sort of hide, move the camera a little bit up towards your head. Still a few more people I need to see with a camera on, please. Now I'm very old fashioned. I'm doing it with my phone. I'm not even pushing buttons on my laptop. But come on, a few more people. Yes, we're getting a couple more. Come on, a couple more. Let's get there. Okay. One, 1, 2, 3, and smile. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. It's always nice to keep a record of who turns up. So I'm looking forward to talking tonight. You get to hear me talk about public speaking. And what I thought I would do is just try to do some of the usual stuff, but also a little bit of different content as well. So you've heard about my background. We don't need this slide. I think I look prettier in that photo. What we're going to do tonight, our roadmap, is I want to try and do a few topics that aren't the usual thing in public speaking. Okay, I want to talk about a few different things that are not necessarily new, but aren't your usual typical public speaking. Now, just to give you an idea, I have been teaching since like 1993. I know that might be older than some of the people in our Zoom tonight. I hope I don't look it. But throughout my life, I have spent a lot of time doing public speaking, whether it be at school, which is where I got interested in it, whether it be for my teaching classes. And I'll be honest, as a public speaker, I would much rather speak to 1,000 people in a room than be at a party and speak to one person. It's so much easier to speak to lots of people. And it's a frame of mind more than anything else. So I want to talk about a few different things related to that. I want to give you some ideas about what to think about. Public speaking is never easy. Even though I've done 30 plus years of it professionally, I still get nervous every single time. Even before tonight, I still get nervous. And I think that's a natural reaction. For those of you who are like, I don't want to present to my class, or I don't want to, speak in front of this group of people, I think everybody experiences that. And we have to accept that it's okay, let it be. Because it's not about perfection. And I really want to emphasize that. If we go to Toastmasters, which is the global organization to teach you to be perfect, it's still not about perfection. It's about a very simple thing. You sharing something to others that they understand. Now, if the slides aren't perfect, or if you mix up your words or something like that, it's okay. Because what matters is the person understands where you're heading. So I want to talk about some of that sort of thing tonight and give some ideas, give some help. How can we become more confident to make less mistakes? Not zero mistakes, just less mistakes. Now, I thought I'd start off with a fun fact. This is some research that I stumbled across, very happy with it. It talked about the top 10 global fears, things we as people are scared of. And it's funny, some on this list I am scared of. Confined spaces or small rooms being number 10. Number 9, thunder and lightning. I don't know if you guys have noticed, if you're in Malaysia, the lightning in Malaysia is freaky and it's different to where I came from. So every time now, after 18 years of living here, every time I'm outside and there's lightning, I still shake. So I'm scared of thunder and lightning. People are scared of open spaces. People, including me, are scared of flying. Actually, it's not the flying, it's the crashing, but I think the two come together, right? People are scared of other people or social situations. Just like I said, going to a party and having to talk to somebody is painful for me. I hate it. So if I go to a party, I only hang out with the people I know, and I try to avoid meeting new people because it's easier. I'm scared of heights. I'm not scared of darkness. That's not such a bad thing, but spiders are pretty evil looking things. And we're getting down to some serious stuff. Death, yes, but the number one thing that people are scared of is public speaking, which I find weird, but a lot of people I talk to have this. So you're not alone, which is great, because if you're scared of it, most of the people in your audience will also understand that. And most of the people in your audience will be like, it's okay. They will forgive mistakes. They will be empathetic with you. They will feel some sort of connection with you, because they know it's not easy to talk in front of a group of people, especially if you do not know them. So that's really, a good fact to have. And I wanted to start with this one, because I found it quite amusing that I'm scared of most of the things on the list, except today's topic, but really to remind us that we're not alone. Let's talk about the difference between a high impact and a low impact presentation. Now, in our university life, we will be forced to do, from our lecturers, from our supervisors, we'll be forced to do a number of presentations. Most of these will be low impact. So a low impact presentation is really, you're presenting ideas, you're sharing some facts, you're repeating information which actually your audience can find elsewhere. So that's sort of low impact. It requires you to sit or stand, maybe through Zoom, talk about some stuff, answer some questions, kind of like what I'm doing tonight. Nothing majorly exciting, nothing that has a sort of a boom to it. Now that's high impact. High impact is when we're talking about new concepts. We're trying to persuade people to understand and believe and follow what we want to believe in. But also, it's more than just what we say. It's everything that we use to make that happen. So it's our slides, it's our videos. Maybe we have entertainment, who knows? But anything that comes in, what you want to do with high impact is you want your audience to go, whoa, I did not expect that. So a high impact presentation is both information and delivery, and that's tied together by your audience remembering for years and years what your presentation was roughly about. Now, a high impact presentation can fail too. I watched a very, very famous world academic, Noam Chomsky. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. He's an American-based academic, I think. He's been around for the last, probably 3,000 years. He's pretty old. And he's an absolute leader in his field. His writing, his thinking is incredible. But he gets up and he speaks like this. Now, his presentation is high impact because of his content and who he is. But it's also a failed high impact because he speaks with one voice and he really has no enthusiasm into what he says. In fact, I'm probably more enthusiastic pretending to be him than he is pretending to be himself. So we need to think about when our presentations are high impact, when our presentations are low impact. Now, the three features that we have to look at: the presenter, the content, and the environment. So I think I've talked about the content. Low impact is us repeating stuff that we've seen, which means, like tonight, I'm probably giving a lecture, or I'm probably just sharing a little bit of somebody else's research findings. But to move it into high impact, we're putting our own analysis onto it, we're putting our own thoughts. Maybe we are asking our audience questions to get them involved in first the discussion, but secondly, we want our audience to think. You know, we want them to be able to, oh, okay, how do I link this to what I'm doing? Or how do I link this to what I learned last week? Or how do I link this to an assignment that I am doing right now? Now, the environment features is a really interesting one because we now live in an online world. You know, you're coming to me from different parts of Malaysia, I guess. Hashid is in Germany, and I'm very jealous about that. I'm in KL, and Zoom has made it possible to do anything we want. But sometimes if we're on campus, we're presenting in a lecture theatre. So our environment is different. I have an environment behind me. It's my office. It literally is my office. It's not a painting. I can take things out. And I use that because I want people to see where I work. So when I present to a group of people, I want them to see that. Some of you guys use the green screen or the white wall and it's just you, or maybe you've got that lovely photo of the Golden Gate Bridge that came with Zoom. These are all environment features. But I learned a couple of things. A white background, a plain wall is good for business, but it's not good if you're doing something study related. You actually want to look like a real person. If you have a black background that's got nothing, you kind of look like you are hiding something. In business, the opposite. If you have too many things in the background, they think you're too busy. But if you've got a plain background, it's cool. Now, when we go into a lecture theatre or a classroom, the environment features we can't control. So what it comes down to is us. How do we make our audience feel? How do we welcome our audience? How do we involve them? How do we make them comfortable with us as people? That when we're talking to them, they like us. That's what's important. And that links us to the first one, the presenter features, because everything we do as a presenter, as a speaker, is how do we get that connection to the audience? Now, it's very difficult on a Zoom to get that connection nicely and easily done because, you know, some of us are hiding behind the black boxes, some of us are not, but it becomes very difficult sometimes to build that. With high impact, you're very, very strongly connected to your audience. You're asking them questions, you're seeking their feedback, and you're involving them in the presentation that you are doing. So that becomes the high impact element. Let's have a look at the type of speeches that we can do and the type of speaking occasions, because, you know, there are different purposes for us to talk, different times and all that sort of thing. So I put it down to 3. An informative speech, we present, we instruct, we give facts. You know, this is what we do, this is how it's done, these are the steps that we take, this is what we discovered. All of that is so very factual, it's a little bit boring. This is the kind of presentation you give if you're asked to do a research project for one of your subjects, and they want you to summarize the kind of information and, you know, sort of give some information about it. That's an informative speech. Persuasive, though, is a bit different. This is when I'm arguing, I'm debating. I want to encourage you to do something different. So, you know, one of the best reasons you should quit university today is getting into a job much faster and earning money really fast. Those people who earn money faster have a better life. Now, that's my really bad attempt at persuasive, but that's an example of persuasive. You're wanting people to take action based on how you share the information and making sure that, you know, you're encouraging them to do something, to be involved in something. So that is persuasive. The last one is entertainment. So to encourage, to onboard. Entertainment's not about telling jokes, okay? It's not so much the, you know, humor, the comedy, that type of thing. But entertainment is about sharing things with people in a fun and accessible way. And it's also about an attitude. It's about how comfortable you make your listeners feel. Now, most lecturers, most university lecturers will say, do informative or do persuasive. And they're not wrong. But I honestly believe to be a memorable speaker, to be a presenter that other people enjoy listening to, you have to have an element of entertainment in the experience. You have to show your personality. You have to have a little bit of fun with it, rather than just, well, there are 3 types of speeches. And that is really, really, to me, the most important. I know in my early days, let me share with you a story, and this is true, and I'm very embarrassed by this story, but it is true. I used to teach a class many, 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 many years ago when I was very new to teaching. And I asked my students, prepare a 45-minute speech about a topic. And it was an informative speech. So I used to teach international trade, and I asked them to do a trade-related topic. 45 minutes was way too much, I know that. But that's not the part of the story. At about 25 minutes, I fell asleep in one of my students' presentations. And wow. Now, maybe it was my fault because I asked them to talk for so long. I accept that. But also because they just talked, because there was no interaction, because there was no connection to the audience, I fell asleep. And it was very difficult to stay awake. So when you are giving a speech, a presentation, when you're doing any form of public speaking, you want to be lively and energetic enough that the person can't fall asleep because they're interested in your words. The words don't just sort of disappear over the top of the head. They listen, they want to hear more. The audience thinks, wow, I like this person. I want to learn more. I want to ask questions. I want to do things, more things with respect to that. Now I'm going to move into competencies of speaking. And I think this one's really important because, we all, not only, the world's #1 most scary thing to do, but all of us in the room today have one thing in common, or actually more than one thing. But you are all using English or Malay as an additional language, which means maybe you're going to make a few mistakes. Maybe you're going to choose the wrong word sometimes or pronounce the word wrongly. And I can give you a list of English words I cannot pronounce, okay? So native speakers have it too. But we shouldn't let that be a reason why public speaking is our biggest fear, for example, because actually I don't care about your language. I care about how you present, not the words that come out of your mouth, because there are always other things, other ways to understand. There are always going to be imperfections. So let me go through this list. First, a useful topic. Okay, the hardest thing is choosing a topic. If it's an assignment, okay, we've got to stick with it. That's a given. But if we get to choose the topic, make it interesting. You know, maybe the topic itself is boring, but give it a good heading. You know, give it a good title. Be creative. Try to use something that's going to hook in your audience, that's going to attract your audience. Say, "Ooh, I want to know what he or she is going to talk about." The next one is having an engaging introduction. Now, there are so many ways to do introductions, and I'm going to actually, I think, share some shortly. But the idea of the introduction is not, "Hello, my name is Craig, and I'm here to speak about public speaking today." It is about making the audience part of your discussion. So my introduction, I went with the 10 top global fears. I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted you to think. I wanted you to relate to some things in your own life, to what, you know, the world thinks, the world experiences. And then I wanted to talk about the topic. You know, if I go and originally the research was presented 1 to 10, not 10 to 1. So the piece of research I got was top 10 global fears, number 1, public speaking. And I'm like, why? You know, suddenly you've told me there's no point in numbers 2 to 10 because the best one's already gone. So I wanted to do something a little different. Very simple technique, but I wanted to start and I wanted to get, you know, you thinking about different things. When I teach my class in India, every class I start with a newspaper article, something crazy from around the world related to their subject of education, but something crazy, something that we can talk about, something that we can argue about, something that we can have different opinions so we can share, and then we can lead into the topic that we're doing. Now, in an assignment presentation, you can do this simply by asking a question, simply by telling a small story, simply by linking it back to something you've done in class, and then moving on. But you want to get people right from the start interested in your topic to stay there. Now, again, it doesn't matter about language skills. If you feel that it's really hard to talk in English or it's really difficult, if you ask a question, you put the question on the slide, you ask the question, that's less time you have to talk. Your audience comes and does the talking for you. And that's a way to get started. You need to have a clear organization. So it is about making sure that facts are very easy to follow. Now, I don't mind what type of presentation somebody does. I always believe that having slides or graphics, it can be words or it can be pictures or both, but I always think that helps to signal for us what is the organization. It helps the audience to stay on track, to follow what you're saying. Key words on a slide help the audience to understand if you mispronounce a word. They help to remember. They help to think, oh yeah, I have to ask a question about this. As a lecturer, if I'm starting to fall asleep, the slides remind me, yes, student talked about this, student talked about this, and then it makes my grading easier. You want to have well-supported ideas. This is about the information that you put out there, having some detail. Don't say something, but offer no evidence or proof or no example. You've got to be able to showcase while it's good. So leaving university is the best decision you can make. Without any further information to that, you're probably thinking, why would he say that? There's not enough to make a decision about it. You know, my favorite one, and it's not a presentation, but often my colleagues will ask me, what do you want for lunch? And I always find that a really horrible Malaysian question, because in New Zealand, in Australia, people won't ask that, okay? But my colleagues often ask me, what do you want for lunch? And I now have a reply to them that really makes them angry. Food. And I say nothing else. And the problem is my answer does not answer their question, but it does answer their question. So well-supported ideas will be saying, I want McDonald's triple cheeseburger, no pickles, large fries, and an orange juice, please. That's a well-supported idea. That's enough detail so that the person can continue, that the person can think. But when I say food, and they're like, what type of food? Edible food, please. It's not giving that detail, okay? We want to have closure in our conclusion. So when we're wrapping up, we need to be able to not only summarize the main point, you know, what was the main 1, 2, or 3 maximum points we wanted to make, but we've got to be able to do it in a way, we've got to be able to do it in a way that the audience understand and know what are the next steps. Now, a class presentation, there might not be next steps, but for your lecturer there is. They've got to grade you. So you have to make that little bit extra effort to remind them that your presentation was strong, that you understood your material, that you deserve that A or whatever grade you are going for. Now, we also need to use clear and vivid language. So this is not pronunciation, by the way, or speaking. It's about using words that are easy to understand, that do not cause confusion. And if we give an example that the person can visualize our example from the words that we use. It's also about not using massive, fancy, big, challenging words because we want to look impressive. We want to look like we studied hard. This is where I come back to, you know what, we have the commonality. We all are presenting in a language that is not our first language. And the best way to do that is to use simple, clear words that everyone can understand, because we are not conveying words. We are conveying a whole idea that relates to the topic. You want to have suitable vocal expression. You will learn from me, I put a lot of emphasis into words. In fact, I'll link it to the next, I use my hands a lot, I use my face a lot. I really want to express to people. And I use that to help you understand what is most important. Also to try to stop you from falling asleep. But vocal expression is about when we choose to be louder, when we choose to be more soft, so that the audience has to listen more carefully to us, because, you know, as somebody starts to get softer and softer and softer, you automatically think it's very important. Sometimes you want to have a very long pause to give people time to think. All of these are the skills that help us to be able to present well. Now, I often take a lot of pauses during my presentation. It's not because I'm terrible at speaking. It's not because I need a drink, but let me have one. Every time I take a pause, every time I take a little tiny break, just like this one, what I'm actually doing is giving my mind time to think and time to get the next sentence in there. It's kind of, you know, loading in the mind, being ready to do something. So that really helps us. You know, even when it comes to questions, if you ask me a question, I might repeat your question. I'll use a few pauses in it because I want to make the question sound fancy, but actually I'm just giving myself time to get it correct. Okay, the nonverbals mean hand gesture, anything we use, including our slides, maybe videos, images, anything that's going to help interact with the audience or attract the audience to where we are. We want to adapt to the audience. Now, the great thing about Zoom is I don't see your faces. So if you're sitting there bored, I probably don't know. But when we are face to face in a room, we can read the audience. We see people, we think, ah. And here's the problem. Students make the mistake of only reading the lecturer. So they constantly look at the lecturer. Yeah, it's like, it's like you're presenting to only one person in the room. Don't do that, because as a lecturer, I look to see, do you present to everybody? Okay, so that's something. But the mistake is often presenting to one person. You forget that the other, 40, 50 people in there are really bored or don't understand. If their facial expression, you know that you can go back. You know that you can explain something a little bit more. So don't make that mistake. Use great visuals. So adept use of visuals. A visual should not be hundreds of words on a page. Okay, it should actually be very simple. I like using color. Now, this is only something I've started doing in the lockdowns. Because I'm not there talking with people, I have to use my slides, my visuals more. So I use colors, red to really make something stand out, green actually because I like that color, but I want to split the colors so that any sentence, any topic, any heading, I can differentiate out ideas. And I found this is really good because it helps keep focus for people. Images, I go for very simple, even simple cartoon images rather than more complex ones, because I, as the speaker, when I talk, I'm the one to share everything, but my image should be like a support for that. And you'll notice I don't use images on every slide because there can be too many, too much images, too much words. So we want to keep it nice and simple. And the final one is convincing persuasion. That comes through your attitude, your enthusiasm. Even if you're talking about a boring topic, like public speaking. It's not a very exciting topic, I'll be honest. It's a useful topic. But your attitude, the way in which you show enthusiasm, willingness, wanting to be part of that discussion is really important. And any assignment, any presentation, whether it be, you're presenting research findings or you're presenting an essay that you've written or whatever, no matter how boring it can be, you can make it exciting. Now, very quickly, and this is the boring stuff of presentations, the different types of ways we can structure our presentation. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time on this because honestly, as I said, I find it boring. It genuinely is boring. But these are typical structures. Chronological is old to new, or like what I did before, new to old. So, you don't always have to go from old to new. You can reverse the timing and showcase, what happened and what were the events that led up to it. Now, that's kind of very common if we look at, some TV programs, murder mysteries and stuff like that. All of that can work in that way. Topical is about grouping clumps of a topic together. Sometimes we might have to talk about 2 or 3 things that are not really related to each other. And that's where I have the opportunity to use my slides. I can shift between topics without them being like this. They can be like this, but I make them look like that. Spatial is more for something that's all over the place. And then you have to showcase linkages between how different things operate. Now, if I'm doing a spatial type presentation, I'm trying to describe and show links between different things. What I will do is I will put up a map or I'll put up a diagram and I'll show everything. And then each time I talk about something, I'll highlight a section only so that you can see, oh, on a whole topic, Craig's now talking about this part of the topic. And then as I move to the side, now he's talking about this part of the topic and it changes. Comparative is when you are talking about 2 different things. Now, the problem with comparative, it's easy to bring everything together for one and then everything together for the other. I prefer a sort of a zigzag, 1 point positive, 1 point negative, 1 point positive, 1 point negative. So everything stays in the memory. If I group everything together and I talk about 10 things about A, and then I compare it to 10 things about B, I've forgotten the first 9 things about A. So that's how the memory works. I've got to go A1, B1, A2, B2, and make it an easy comparative. The 5th one is a problem leading to a solution. If we're doing our own research, this is how we do it. We start off with what is our problem statement and then move into the solution. Now, if you recall, let me go back. You guessed it, number 1, public speaking is the top fear of people in the world. That's the problem. Every slide since is being my solution as to how I get over and resolve this. And the final one is causal. I hate saying that word. See, you found a word that I'm really bad at. Causal. And this is just looking at everything that contributed to an action. So it's a little bit like problem solution. It is a little bit like chronological, but not everything is time-based. There are 4 things that led to your failure in your study. 1, you didn't go to class. 2, you didn't read the textbooks. 3, you decided to go out partying all the time. And 4, we'll figure something out. But that's causal. So you're just simply talking about all the different causes and then bringing it together, which resulted in I failed my university paper. Now, having been somebody who actually did fail university papers, I failed my major in my second year, okay, which is really embarrassing. It happens. Okay, attention getting strategy. So you remember in this one, I talked about having an engaging introduction. These are some simple strategies to create an engaging introduction. Tell a story. Refer to the occasion. Okay, that one's a bit boring. Refer to recent or historical events. So that's like me using news articles in my sessions. Refer to previous speeches. My classmate just talked about this. So I'm going to try and not cover the same thing, but I want to show you something different. It's attention grabbing. It's going to connect you to your audience. Your personal interest, your common audience interest. You know, right before I said, look, we all have a few things in common. One of the main ones is many of the presentations we have to give are not in our first or native language. So I already brought you guys together, just the tiniest way, okay? But I brought you guys together by, by giving a connection that you can relate to. So find out, what the connections in your different audiences are going to be, and how do you relate that? Startling statistics, 84% of people are scared of public speaking. Only 63% of people are scared of dying or spiders. Now, that's just using some really easy to access data. You can do it as a statement as well. You don't have to only use, statistics. More people are scared of public speaking than they are of flying. Okay, it's enough. It gets you thinking, but it's something that you can do. You can use an analogy. Now, analogy is an unusual word. If you're not familiar with it, it just means something that relates to it. So I used an analogy earlier when I was talking about making sure you have the appropriate supported ideas. I told a story that was about lunch, that was about food, rather than that was about my choice of a triple cheeseburger, no pickles, large fries, and an orange juice. Now, that in effect is an analogy. That was unrelated to public speaking, but it is a story that I can tell that can help you think through the idea that I wanted to talk about. The idea being you have to give some detail, right? So the analogy, food and McDonald's, came close together for that. You can use a quotation, so a famous person. I'm just going to give you a piece of advice from a lecturer to a student, okay? Quotations are really boring, especially if you quote the wrong person. So quoting, for example, I've seen some quoting a popular singer is not a good idea. So be very careful with quotes. They are useful. You can use them as an analogy, but just kind of be careful about which ones you use, because sometimes they backfire. Use a question, ask a question. The final one, use humor, be funny, start off. Start off in a funny way, start off with a bit of a joke. The difficulty, we all have different sense of humor. I know that. And sometimes it's really hard to find a joke or find something humorous that everybody will understand. But that's up to you to think, what do you think will work for them? All right, let's get into delivery. This is how you present the presentation, how you get up, how you speak, what you do. So we talk about vocal aspects, and this is where I actually think I have been successful over the years. It's because of the sound that comes out of my mouth. Now I'm going to start off with something. I hate the way that I sound. I do not like my voice. When I listen to my voice on tape or on video, oh, it's horrible. But my voice today compared to 10 years ago is much better. Other people like it, but it's not just the sound of my voice. It's how I do everything else that relates to voice, which we can all do. Articulation is about pronouncing words properly. So it's very easy to, it's very easy for us to prepare and practice so that we can pronounce the words properly. Now, I'm going to do something that's a little bit naughty, but let me put something in the chat room. I actually have you've all heard of tongue twisters, I hope. So I'm putting a tongue twister that I invented into the chat box. The sheep shit on the sheet. Actually, very hard to say really fast. The ship's sheep shit on the sheet. See, it's really difficult to do. Now, I choose this one because the S sounds are really frustrating. More for me at the moment that I've lost a tooth because it comes through so loud. But articulation is about being able to take a sentence and to say it accurately without problems. If you're slow, people just think, oh, he wants to make a point. So it actually can work to your advantage. Now, articulation is about every single word being correct, every single word being clear. So if I look at the ship's shit on the sea, sheep, and I know I'm going to screw that up. Articulation is you can also hear every single word, not that the words get merged together and you're not really sure what the person's saying because they're all, okay. Pronunciation is each word is correct. So sheep rather than sheep or whatever. There are other words, before through this. Pronunciation, it's pronunciation, but it's spelled pronunciation, which is really another frustration about English. When you see it, you think you know what it says and you think you know how to say it, and it's said a whole different way. All of this can be practiced. Now, here's my advice. If you struggle to pronounce a word in your practice, delete the word and find an easier word that you can say. I would much rather listen to you use simple words to explain an idea so I understand it well than I would listen to you screw up pronunciation of a word and me like, huh? What did they say? What did that mean? And then have to ask you a question about it. So all of this is practice stuff first, but it gives you a time to change. Accent. Every single one of us has an accent. Now, my accent's kind of faded over the years because I've lived in different countries. But when I went back to Australia a few years ago, everybody in Australia speaks this way. And it was really, really hard to be able to listen to them first. But in the end, I could speak Australian too, and my accent changed. Now, what you want to look at is, just acknowledge that you have an accent and never think about it again. It doesn't matter. But you've got to know that, you say words a certain way, or, you have a sort of an emphasis certain way. Vocal quality is about consistency. So sometimes when I listen to student presentations, as they get more nervous, they become a little bit more quieter, or the pace changes, or what's worse is they rush to get it finished and everything's done like this and you're not really sure what they said. Again, it's something you can practice for. A vocal quality is your audience can hear everything you say. Your audience understands the words. And if it's a difficult word, I'll go back to pronunciation. If it's a difficult word, put the word on your slide. You know, it's there. Point to it. I'm talking about this word, pronunciation. So even if you make a mistake, it's there. Everybody can see it. But vocal quality is about beginning to end, similar pace, similar speed, similar volume, similar energy. So you will see from me, I put a lot of energy into every presentation I do. If now I sort of start to feel a little bit tired and I kind of get a little bit sluggish, then the presentation's a failure. So look at how you can keep that. The next one is pitch and inflection. So, you know, this is the pitch of your voice is really how do you sound? What is unique to your voice? But it's also not about going over the top. So you've got to sort of, you know, modulate. We do not want a flat voice, but we don't want something that's forever up, high, down, low, up, high, down, low. So that actually happens when we are nervous or when we are uncomfortable or when we feel that we don't know our subject well. Our voice changes automatically. And the only thing we can do about it is if we know that it's happening. If we're nervous, we're so busy trying to get through our speech, you know, we've got our piece of paper, we just want to get this done, over with, and gone. We actually forget to think about it, but we can control all of this ourselves. The rate of speaking, our pace, I talked about pauses earlier. Sometimes I do this, you know, it comes back in again, and it's okay. In a presentation, if you found that you've talked about something and you need to talk about it again, or you talked about it because you're excited to talk about it, and then it's, I've got to talk about it here. Just acknowledge that and move on. That shows us that we're human. The people that are viewing us, that are grading us, they respect that because it's like, okay, I've done the same thing. So it's actually good. It shows connection with them. Emphasis is about sometimes we need to pick on certain words, any different way. If there's a concept, there's an idea, there's a word that we need to highlight. You know, if we're typing it, we can highlight it with, you know, a marker pen like this, or on computer, we can highlight it as well. When we speak, we have to do that with voice and with hand actions. So words, you know, anything that the person, the audience notices from us, that the word is different or the idea is different. And then they're like, okay, I know I've got to deal with this. And the final one is projection. Now, projection is about speaking up loudly. So if you're in a lecture theater, I give you a challenge. I think if you're lucky enough to be in face-to-face and in lectures, you'll notice that most lecturers use a microphone. So they have their little microphone here and they're talking into it, or they have a little lapel microphone that they're talking into so that everybody can hear. That's lazy. I used to teach up to 1,000 people in a room. I never use microphones. I can throw my voice from the bottom of my throat. I can throw my voice out there so people can hear me, that they can understand me well. That's what you have to aim for. You might not get it for a while. It takes a lot of practice, but at least try. You want everybody to hear you. You want to speak a little bit louder. But what I want to get at with this is all of these vocal aspects help make your presentation, your public speaking, more interesting, more lively, and if you're being assessed, a better grade for it. Go on to the next slide. Non-verbal. Everything you see that is not the words coming out of the person's mouth. It's their appearance. You know, how do they dress for the situation? Don't underdress, don't overdress. Honestly, I hate it when students give me a presentation and they dress in a suit and tie. I mean, I'm not asking you to be my butler, so don't overdress, you know, nice shirt, look professional, look tidy. That's what you look for. Look comfortable, because what I also evaluate students on is, are they comfortable to present? You know, are they happy in themselves to do this? Movement, you know, how much do you move? Now, doesn't really work in Zoom. I'm stuck in a chair. But if you're in a classroom, for example, you know, do you walk around as you talk? Now, I've always found walking around really helpful, because if people are listening, they will follow how you walk around the room, which means you know you've got their attention and you know that the presentation is going well. If you stand in one place only, actually you're more likely they will think you are scared by that. Gestures, we talk about using our hands. It's not big gestures unless you're in a 1,000 room audience. Okay, sorry, a 1,000 person audience room, but it's how you use simple gestures to be able to add value and add life. It's, you know, the whole thing about movement and gestures is adding some life and some dimension to the presentation. Facial expressions. Okay, probably not that extreme, but it is about how you look, how your face is matching with the things you're saying. So if you're saying something that is worrying, your facial expression should be more somber, should be more serious. You know, you change because you are talking about something serious. That leads us into eye contact. All of a sudden, I'm staring in my camera because I'm saying something I really want you to think about. Other times, not so important. And the final one, environment and background. It's simply about creating things. Now, my suggestion here is, look, if you're on Zoom, you know, you don't all have to get an office space like this. Use your natural background. Don't hide it. You know, if it's your bedroom, we all know where everybody's, you know, learning at home, and not everybody has a photo studio and stuff like that. I don't like the green screen backgrounds because often they mix up with the heads. Every time you move, I see a piece of the background and then half of your face is covered by the photo. And I find that it's not a really strong thing. So my advice is, look, be natural with the background that you've got. People nowadays, especially what's happened the last 2 years, people actually like seeing you. They like seeing your environment. They feel comfortable with that because you've let them into your personal space. And I think that's, you know, that's something that's really worth thinking about. Now, I want to go to a Q&A in a moment. Oh, hang on. And I'm about 2 slides off from doing that. And I wanted to put this in here. Most people who talk about public speaking just talk about one. Now I'm going to do something a little bit different. As students, we have to work with classmates. Sometimes we have to do group presentations, and they are hard. They are really, hard for some of us. So I just wanted to do a little bit of advice on group presentations before I invite questions. And sometimes you forget your topic. All right, group presentations, your leader has a responsibility, and it falls into 3 areas: preparation, organization, and delivery. The preparation is about building and maintaining the group communication, making sure everybody's familiar. Now, the problem with groups is everybody takes a role and they only focus on their role. That's useless. You need to understand each other. If one of your group members suddenly gets COVID and is in hospital, you have to take over. So you need to know what it is. So I think it's really important that as a group, you actually prepare the whole presentation together, and then you decide who will be focusing on what topic, okay? When you present as a group, you want to make it look like everybody's 100% comfortable with everybody's content. The organization, in the preparation, the language and terminology barriers, this also gives you an opportunity to see, oh, look, is there an area where somebody struggles with saying a word? And I'm going to type into, give me a second. I'm just typed into the chat box one English word I cannot actually say. I go to extreme lengths not to say the word, because every time I pronounce it, I totally screw it up. So, you know, in that case, a supportive group would make sure that that word is not in my speech, or if that word is to be said, I'm not the person doing that, that section, okay? So, you know, it's a great way to see, look, okay, I know Craig has trouble with a few words. We ask him to do this section, but we want him to know all of the content. We want it to look like one person wrote the whole thing. It comes together beautifully. The organization is just, you know, the rehearsal, the scheduling, and the final part of that is being honest to each other. I hate speaking in front of groups. I'm scared of this. I don't think the lecturer likes me. Okay, so you get a lesser part, but you do it, or maybe I give you more of a part because we want to show our trust in you. And the final one is delivery, you know, making sure that you understand each person's style, that that's going to work, that you can calm each other down so that, you know, you're not scared or not fearful of the different thing. And success or failure is a group thing. It's not an individual. You never turn to somebody and say, you screwed it up. We got a bad grade, it's your fault. It's a group thing, because as a leader, it's your responsibility to make sure that that person actually had the skills, the training, and the support from you. Or, you know, you could have changed their role so that they could perform better or less worse. And the final one is delivering as one. How do we deliver as one? We have a purpose. Now, everybody's going to say, the purpose is to explain your topic well. To me, that's bullshit. The purpose is to graduate, to pass, to get a good grade. So make sure that you're honest to yourself about the purpose, but that is your absolute first purpose before you think about, you know, making sure everybody understands the concept. The second one is the oral content, so the words. You guys get it all down. You know what order it's going to be. You're not repeating information. And you never say this. As my friend said earlier, never say that. You pretend you are one person and you just talk about, stated earlier was. It's so much smoother and easier. Dressing. So if you're a group, dress the same. Same color. You don't all have to have the same, you know, flowery shirt or whatever, but have the same color scheme. Nothing's worse than a group of 4 students standing up dressed 4 different ways, 4 different colors. It doesn't show team. It doesn't show together. Everybody wearing a black shirt and blue jeans, that shows together. That's valuable. Facilities is about just knowing how to use the technology. And if you're using Zoom, knowing how you can pass to each other without any disruption. So the next person just takes over as soon as I've finished my words and they continue. Visuals, about getting the style and everything together and having one style of visuals. So if 4 people write, if each person writes different visuals for their own section and they put it together, I can see that. I can tell from the choice of words. Make it one. Delivery, obviously, is about it being smooth. Rehearsal is about practicing. I'm going to make a really odd statement here. Whether it be group or individual presentations that you guys are doing, a lot of people give the advice that you should do lots of rehearsals. Don't over-rehearse. For me, 1 or 2 is the absolute maximum. You want to practice with your words or anything you have a bit of trouble with, absolutely. But don't over-rehearse, don't over-practice on things because it gets confused in the mind. And if I do like 5 practices for something, by the time I go to do it in front of an audience, I get more nervous than I do if I didn't practice it at all. So, okay, what I've tried to do tonight, and this is me, let's come back to here, let me find it. Closure in conclusion. This is me doing closure in conclusion, just so you see where it comes back to. What I've tried to do is share some of the things that are useful for when we do public speaking, whether it be an assignment, whether it be in front of a student organization like we're at now, whether we're going to present some research, even if we're speaking in front of a group of friends. It comes down to your personality is more important than your content, because your personality gets you liked and then your content gets you respected. It doesn't matter if we're nervous. There are things we can do to overcome that. It doesn't matter if we're speaking in a language that is not our first, because we can still be good presenters using less complicated words. So I hope that some of what I've talked about has been helpful. I'm really happy to take questions from the floor. If you guys have any questions, if you want to ask anything, I'm happy to answer. So over to you, sir.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Craig. So if anyone has a question, you can write it in the chat or just open the mic and ask, and the Dr. Craig is here to answer all your questions.
I don't have a question, rather it's some kind of comment and compliment. Okay. So most of what you have said in this presentation was aligned with all of that I know about public speaking, especially that I used to listen a lot to TEDx. And what I noticed in most of the speakers that they start their presentation with a story, because we human, we tend to get affected and get interested in stories, and we can see that especially in the Quran, because most of the verses and most of the ahkam, if you know, Quran deliver it in a story-based approach, so that affect us a lot. And you know, a lot of stories like Joseph story in Surah Yusuf alayhi salam. So that's what I want to say. Thank you a lot for the information.
It's a good observation. Stories are really powerful because we use stories in everyday life. Even talking to our friends, we're always telling stories. But for some reason, we think when we have to give a speech, we have to be suddenly formal.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, it's a really nice reflection because you've reminded us that we are constantly using stories as part of our communication.
So that's all for me. Thank you a lot. And it was a very informative, especially the additional point, which was the group speaking, the group presentation, because I suffered from it in the last semester, my group. So
everybody suffers from it.
Yeah, so I felt it.
I actually have a book chapter on group presentations. Let me send that through to you guys. If you can share that with everybody when I WhatsApp you later. But feel free to share this with everybody because it's really good. And honestly, I mean, okay, lecturers love to assign group presentations. Most of them remember how horrible group presentations and group assignments were, but they still do it anyway. So you just got to look at, okay, what can we do to make it look better? And how do we make our presentation a little bit nicer than anything else?
So that's my comment. Thank you.
I see Omar has got a question.
Yes. Yeah, Omar is asking how to avoid the stuttering during the presentation.
Okay, so Omar, can I ask you to turn your camera on for a second? I'm not going to embarrass you, but can I ask you to turn your camera on for a second? And you can just give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down to this question, okay? Do you stutter when you speak normally?
Actually, Doctor,
Okay.
a bit.
Right, so my answer is going to be a little bit different, okay? Because if we stutter because we get nervous, we just have to do a little bit of self-talk. That's reminding ourselves to slow down. It's reminding ourselves to choose words that we are less likely to stutter on. But if you have a stutter in normal speech first, there's a couple of things you can do. Same principles, just take it slowly. You will know which words you struggle with most. Eliminate words with those sound combinations. So actually just change your choice of words if you can. If it's a nervous thing, not a language thing, not a pronunciation stutter, what I actually do, and I've seen other people do it. You know, at the beginning, I have a slide. Hi guys, I have a stutter. Don't give me a hard time. I actually I would put it up there first. What you can do, because you can't change how you speak, what you can do is you use your slides. You have the key words. Maybe you have a handout which gives some more information so that the people can follow you. Now, let me tell you a story, okay? We love stories. When I first started my teaching career, my office was next to a big lecture theatre on campus. And there was a first-year psychology lecturer, really lovely lady, but she had a huge stutter. In fact, she could not talk for more than 15 minutes. It was just hard for her. Now, what she did was she printed her speech. She gave everybody her speech at the beginning so that they had all the words. She went through it the best she could. She did questions and answers. Over a few years, it wasn't instant, but over a few years, she spent a lot of time refocusing and retraining her voice, which was great because after 5 years, she speaks like me now, no stutter whatsoever. So she used a coping mechanism, which was literally, she gave out her speech, she had all the keywords on the slides, she helped the audience she helped the audience focus on the concepts, and then she worked on herself. So if you have a stutter, don't worry about it. Just use your visuals, use other things to help your audience focus. Let them know. You don't want them laughing at you. Laugh at yourself first, which is why I would say, look, I have a stutter, bear with me, the information's there, and then be confident about it. But honestly, I've seen really top quality professionals with a stutter actually do really well. So it can be managed nicely.
Yes, there is Muhammad Faiz. He's asking, does the nature of public speaking different from situation to another situation? And he's giving an example here. Yeah.
Okay, so the situation in which we're giving a presentation, a speech, can be very different, but the skills are the same. It's engage with your audience, be confident about the delivery, organize the content so that it's easy to understand, use support to help you. Whether you are speaking at a shopping mall, whether you are emceeing a product launch or a party or a graduation ceremony, whether you're giving a presentation, the skills are the same.
Ayman is asking how to be more comfortable while presenting.
Don't think too hard. You know, fear about something is our worst enemy as a person. We get scared about something. We think it's going to be hard. I'm nearly 50 and I still get scared before I do a presentation, of which I've done thousands and thousands and thousands, but I still get a little bit scared. I have to constantly remind myself, you know what, just let it happen. Tomorrow, I'm giving a keynote presentation for university professors in Pakistan. I'm only talking for 30 minutes. I am really nervous. And actually, I haven't written my presentation. But I've also got to realize, you know what I'm talking about tomorrow, I know well. What I'm talking about, I know more than my audience. I have more experience than my audience. What I'm talking about is I never have to see these people again. So if I screw it up, it doesn't matter. So there's all these different things I can tell myself, and that helps. So being comfortable is just let your personality out, recognize that it's going to happen regardless. If you let the fear control you, you're going to get a bad result. If you try to enjoy it a little bit, or you're just like, you know, let it be, it's going to be easier for you. And it gets better with time. You know, more experience, you get better. But also remember this one really weird fact. Every single day of your life, you do public speaking. You talk to friends, you talk to classmates, you talk to family, you talk to whoever's around. All of that's public speaking. Why are you suddenly nervous when it's in a formal setting?
So if there is anyone want to ask also?
Go for it.
Yes, I want to ask.
Yes, go.
Go for it.
I currently notice that I have a fear of audience.
Okay.
So what can I do to get over it? I can't when even when I'm speaking to you now, I'm feeling strange. I don't know why, but it's happened to me a lot.
Okay, no problem. You know what? If you're on Zoom, I just changed the settings so I don't see everybody's faces. That's one thing. Okay. What I suggest is don't look at the audience, look over the audience. So if you're in a room, right, it's so easy to stare at a person, you know, you sort of look them in the eye. Don't, just look over, oops, look over them. You see bodies, you don't see faces. You've just got to try different techniques. One of the things that I often do, and allow me to stand up, you'll see I'm not not dressed professionally in this. Instead of looking at you like this when I talk, I have slides behind me. I actually talk to the side so I can see you, I can see my slides, but I'm not watching you. So you become less important. Less important, but really less of a distraction to me as the speaker. You just have to try different things. On Zoom, honestly, you know, you can change your view setting, right? I minimize it. I don't even see myself when I present on Zoom because, you know, it's like, oh my God, is that what I look like? And then I see other students and I see their reactions and I'm like, oh no, they don't like what I'm saying. I just turn all of that off and talk. And sometimes you just have to blot out your audience a little bit until you're comfortable presenting and then slowly let your audience come in. When I'm super nervous, like for example, tomorrow is going to be an example, but even last year, end of last year, I did a 2-hour presentation in the Philippines for PhD supervisors. And honestly, those people were more experienced than me. Some of them were older than me. And I didn't want to look at their faces. I didn't want any of that. But after the first few minutes, where I sort of got warmed up and I'm kind of okay with everything, it didn't worry me anymore. So, you know, you just work a strategy that helps you.
Ahmad here.
Yeah,
Thank you. Ahmad is asking, what if I screwed up in the presentation? How to cover it?
Don't cover it up. No, just be honest. You know, people are people. Oh, look, I screwed this up. I said this wrong. Let me start again. Be honest with your audience. Don't treat them like fools. They know you screwed up. It's obvious. Trust me. Just say, oh, look, I'm so sorry about this, guys. Let me backtrack and start again at a particular point and just go with it. People will respect you for being honest, taking responsibility for the fact that you did it and not trying to cover it up. Okay. I honestly think a cover up when we are presenting, when we're speaking in front of others, unless it's a really minor mistake nobody notices, go for it. You know, yeah, but just sort of like, let's start again at this point. I can see everybody's a little confused. Let me try again and just be honest. A lot of public speaking is the connection to your audience. It's not the content, it's you, your personality. And the more authentic you are, the more honest you are to your audience, they will forgive a lot of things. But they want you first, then your content. And if you screw up the content, you can fix that.
Thank you, Dr. Craig. I think there is no more questions.
Cool.
Yeah.
And it's perfect just on 10 o'clock.
Yeah, it's a perfect on the time.
Hours.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. It was an informative seminar, and we hope that we can invite you again, inshallah. For the audience, you can find the link in the chat. So go and register there, so it can register you in for an activity. Thank you all, and thank you, Dr. Craig. So glad to see you here. Yeah.
It's my pleasure to meet everybody. I'm going to put my LinkedIn details here. Just give me a second.
Yeah, take your time.
If you'd like to connect with me, if you want to ask questions or anything, LinkedIn is really easy for me. If you're going to add me, just say I came to tonight's session so I know who you are. But I'm always happy to answer questions or give advice or help along the way. It's really nice meeting everybody. Thank you guys for the great questions. Thank you for staying awake. You know, one of the early things, we want to keep that. But I do appreciate the questions. I wish you guys luck with all of your studies, and